Any basketball fans in the audience tonight? None? Or one? Any of you basketball geeks? Yeah, I can make most of this stuff up, which is fantastic. And as I used to be a strategist working with Jimmy, he's kind of used to that. Normally at this point in the presentation, you kind of talk about the fact that this is why you should be listening to me, because I have great creds in this space, and I actually do have a very unique background. So actually, there's a lot of stuff that I can talk about that is really relevant to this evening's presentation. So my first degree is in astrophysics. But I can legitimately say I was the worst astrophysicist ever to come out of Birmingham University. That's another story. I used to be a second-hand car salesman. My first job out of uni was as a second-hand car salesman, and you learn a lot about human behaviour as a car salesman. I remember when people used to come in and trade in their second-hand cars to buy new. The first thing that we did, or the first thing that I got taught to do, was yes, look at the car and bodywork and stuff, and whatever mileage. But the first thing you do is you open the boot and you check to see whether the boot is tidy or not. Right? And if it's tidy, it means that they've actually taken the time to clear the car out and they mean business. They want to sell the car. We spent time with them. If they hadn't cleared it out, you know what, we kind of spent a bit of time with them, but then really passed them on to the next salesman who didn't look too busy. And you learn a lot about human behavior and actually behavioral targeting, which is what I do a lot of now. The last two, I'm not sure whether I should talk about, but I once did come, but I will anyway. I did once come second in an LGBT kickboxing competition, which was a surprise to me and my girlfriend, because I hadn't realized I joined an LGBT club. And I was beaten by a 6'4" German woman, so you know, kudos to me, I think. And I once did deliver a keynote presentation at the Sexy Email Conference in Amsterdam, actually. And I remember when Michael rang me, very heavy Dutch accent, and I thought he'd said, "Would you like to come and speak at the Sex Email Conference in Amsterdam?" And I went, "Yeah, I'll pay my own fare." And I got there and I had to talk about emails instead, but never mind. Back to this evening's topic. Just one thing to bear in mind, in particular as we're here at Red Badger, and the importance of actually thinking about that when you set off on a project, or when you think about the experience you want to deliver your customers, or some of the decisions you're making around product, actually you're never going to think about all of the things that you're never going to think about, right? There's no way that you can do that. So when you begin on these projects, and when we started looking at how we deliver customer experiences and how we use data, it's important for us to think about the fact that actually there will be intended consequences of what you're trying to do, and they're the things that you're trying not to change during the course of the project, but there will be unintended consequences. And so it's about actually how do you build out a platform or a project that takes that into account so that you can be agile enough to change direction at any moment in time, depending on what's happening in the economic climate, what's happening with customers, what's happening with technology, or indeed what the agency is trying to sell you in that 6 months to get their targets. I used to work for agencies, so I know what it's about. So why are basketball players tall? And what does that mean to do with customer experiences, engagement and stuff? So let's go back. It's 1891, it's Springfield, Massachusetts, which for those of you who don't know, that's the US. And if you don't know, that is worrying. But more specifically, it's December 1891, and it's bloody cold. And you've got, I might swear on the odd occasion, but I am from Yorkshire. So this is Dr. James Naismith, who was an academic at the Springfield College. And it was his responsibility to keep the 20 or so young men in his charge fit. But it was so cold at that time that they couldn't train outside. So he thought, well, what can I do with these 20 young lads? The one thing he did have was an indoor gym. So I thought, well, I'll take them inside, and we can make use of that facility because it's relatively warm. And the two other things that he had as well was he had that ball, which was it's a football shaped ball, not it's soccer for our US audience. Is there anyone in from the US? No, great. Oh, great, there you are, I see. I won't crack the next joke then. And then he had these peach baskets, yeah? And originally he kind of got them to split them into two teams. They had to put the ball into opposition basket, and they got a point really easy, right? So what he did was he got the janitor in, And they said to the janitor, can you attach that basket to that ring that's on the outside of the balcony of the gym? And that ring is 10 foot high. And do you know how high basketball hoops are now? Oh, come on, I've just given you the answer. 10 foot, right? So unintended consequence of that warming more people up inside. And that's where basketball comes from. And actually, that's the end of my presentation, right? Because that's why that's why basketball players are tall. You know, he introduced some rules because one of the first time they ever played, it turned into a mass brawl because actually there were no rules, and I think someone had a dislocated jaw, there was bruises, there was black eyes. He introduced some rules, and over time, basketball has evolved to that amazing sport that it is now. And yes, so basketball players are tall as a result of that and have consistently got taller. This is from thehoopsgeek.com. Everyone is a bit of a geek, right? So it's a really good website if you're looking for this kind of material. If you're going to the sexy email event in Amsterdam, it's a different website. But so getting tall, but are they getting tall? Because if you look what happens in round about the 80s, right, statistical analysis might be a little bit skewed here, but in general, players weren't getting as tall as they were going to be. And why is that? So let me introduce you to the three-point rule. If you know about the three-point rule. So what happened, there's actually, the concept started quite a few years ago, but someone in the NBA, which is where really it needed to take off for it to be taken as a rule across the world, is they wanted their version of the baseball's home run, right? Because they thought that was a really exciting thing that happened in baseball. So they kind of decided, well, what could we do in basketball that would introduce another level of excitement to the sport? So they came up with this idea of a three-point line, which is, and apparently it's pretty arbitrary, that they just drew a line about 20 feet away from the hoop and decided that if you're on the other side of that line, you would get 3 points for your shot. If you're inside the line, you'd get 2 points for your shot. And that was to make the game more exciting. But it had this unintended consequence of the fact that if you look at the accuracy of shots within a basketball game, on the left-hand side, you can see that if you're really close to the net, chances of you getting a basket pretty high. But as you move away from the net, actually your accuracy doesn't drop that much until you're actually quite way beyond the 20, 25 feet away. So actually, if you watch a basketball game, you'll see that people now kind of realize that they're on the line. If they take a step back, they get 50% more points, but their shooting accuracy only drops by about 10%. So it's kind of worth doing. And as a result of that, you didn't need to be tall, right? Well, you need to be tall, but you didn't need to be a 7'2" player to get all the points. You can now be relatively short and 6'5" or something, which is still kind of up there. So if you look at the numbers again, so if you're tall, the majority of your points come if you're close to the net, 85-inch players, high. But if you're shorter, you get these points away from the net as well, right? So I think it's worth bearing that in mind. So that leads me to this idea that when I create customer experiences, loyalty programs, recognition programs for the brands that I've worked with, both agency side and client side, it's about, as I talked about earlier, thinking about the intended consequences of the behaviors you want to influence that are consistent and core to your brand and to your business model, but have an open mind about the unintended consequences. But also think about this as being a continuous evolution. So in the same way that if basketball, and actually the majority of sports have evolved over time, so will your customer experiences, your loyalty programs, the way that you interact with customers and the technology and how you use technology for your customers. To bring this back to just a little bit of reality. So I have been fortunate for the last 4 or 5 years to work for the Natura & Co company group, who the 4 brands in there are Aesop, Avon, The Body Shop, and Natura in Latin America. And I was fortunate that I started my career there, or my time there working with the Aesop brand. And they asked me to come in and look at their CRM vision and the stack that they needed, and then look at the loyalty program, or as we called it, the recognition program for Aesop customers. And Aesop is a very particular brand. I don't know whether you've been into one of the stores, but it's an amazing experience. And we would never do anything as brash as have a points make prizes loyalty program. Not that that's not the right thing to do for a lot of brands. So ESOP, it wasn't right. But what we wanted to do was to create this idea of how we could recognize really strong behaviors that we felt were really strong and attuned to the ESOP brand. And I call these our axes of recognition. In the end, we didn't use any of these, but no, not any of these. We didn't use all. we didn't use all of these, but because I'm a astrophysicist, failed astrophysicist, I like to keep things relatively simple, and I don't want it to be rocket science. So we kind of just based our idea around these, what, when, why, who, and how. So what are the key things that we wanted to influence in terms of or recognize in terms of customer behavior? So for ESOP, obviously it was important that we wanted customers to buy lots of our product, but because we were known as a gifting destination, so we wanted to recognize in particular the fact that we had customers that only shopped with us once a year, coming up to gifting, so coming up to November, December. So they'd come into our shops, come online, and just buy gifts for their friends, families, and work colleagues. So we wanted to make sure that we treated those individuals in a particular way. Yes, we tried to get them to buy more, perhaps for themselves, gifting themselves, but we also talked to them about actually what are the other gifting opportunities throughout the course of the year, so that you can carry on being a generous customer, being generous with your gifting. For ESOP, tenure was important. So again, because we kind of treated our customers as guests, long-standing guests, so people who visit us on a regular basis over a course of 5-10 years, we wanted to make sure that we recognized those individuals in a particular way as well. Even if they only just came in once a year and bought a particular product that was their product favorite, which I'll talk to in a second. So we did a very, very simple thing we looked at customers who'd come to us consistently for the last 5-10 years, and very old-fashioned. We actually had a brand book that was created in ESOP's 33rd year. Odd numbers are very important to ESOP. And we just did a very simple thing, which meant, thank you for being a customer of ours over the last 5-10 years. We just sent them the book with a thank you from our chief customer officer, who's the only person actually who's been with the brand for the whole 33 years or 34 years now, 35 years. No call to action, it was just a thank you. And it went down really, really well. NPS scores just went through the roof with that particular segment of customers. And of course, they talk to other people as well. And then we want to talk to customers about what they bought as well. And this is where getting people involved with the brand was really important. So when we had a reformulation of our parsley seed antioxidant serum, which is quite a mouthful, that a very, very great product for us, and I use it all the time, and it's not bad because I'm actually 85. So ESOP is not renowned for asking for customer feedback, but at this point we kind of thought, we wanted to show that recognition. So customers who've been loyal to that product, they've been buying it for 4 or 5 years, we brought them into the product development process. So we had a formulation that we'd created, and we weren't probably going to change that too much, but we got some of these key customers in. We got them to try the product because it was actually a slightly different texture. We took some feedback from them, made some slight modifications. Then when the product was launched, obviously, they got to find out about the products first. They got the samples. They were the first people to be able to come to a digital or a physical consultation on the product, speak to one of our consultants, use the product in combination with their other products. And because the thing that we were worried about was actually losing those customers because of the new formulation. But in fact, we had the opposite effect, and we actually, within that particular base, the product was even more popular. So I think that sometimes you kind of need to think about keeping things relatively simple, because you're not always trying to put a man on the moon like I tried to do, and successfully. One of our projects actually in the 3rd year at astrophysics was to try and discover where the center of the universe was with a bit of equipment. And the way you do that is you calibrate your equipment to look for hydrogen. And so you calibrate your equipment by saying, well, what's closest to us in terms of has a lot of hydrogen? And of course, the sun in our solar system has a lot of hydrogen. So the first thing that we did was to try and find the sun using our equipment. Yeah. Good luck with that. And again, so I talked about points make prizes. And when I first joined ESOP, we had big agencies coming to us and saying, look, this old-fashioned way of doing rewarding, about points, making prizes, and it's about cards and points and economic rewards, and it's a sense of entitlement. That's old school, right? You guys need to be in this new world of affinity loyalty, which is all about belonging to the brand, and it's about that human interaction. It's not about the card. It's about an appreciation of who you are. And you know what? That, in some instances, that makes sense, right? So for brands like Aesop and Mulberry, it makes perfect sense because I think that's where you play. But other brands like McDonald's or Nando's or Tesco's, right? So Tesco's at the moment, they play really well in that point because actually in terms of the current economic climate, they've got lots of levers that they can pull in that part of the world. So again, any agencies that come to you kind of say, this is the space you have to play in, take it with a pinch of salt because that's something that people like me are trying to sell you. So it is about shifting mindset with customers. It's about, for Aesop in particular, it's about how can we give customers, how can we get them to buy more from us? We wanted to move that to actually how can we show these customers that we truly value them as individuals, and ultimately, because actually we do have a CFO and to please and a group to then buy more, because obviously I often get talked about are there different metrics you should be using when you're looking at recognition programs, your CRM programs, the value of your personalization programs? Yes, right. So NPS, customer satisfaction, are all important, but ultimately that's the number that the CFO is going to want to read. And NPS, you need to make that link between those fuzzy scores into something that's a bit more tangible for him and the shareholders. So I talked about some of those things that are unintended consequences. So free coffee. I don't know if you remember a few years ago when Waitrose created their loyalty program. You could go into any Waitrose store, you didn't have to make a purchase, you showed your card, you got a free coffee. And I don't even know, but there's a bit of in the papers, a lot of Waitrose customers are complaining because you had all these people turning up with Tesco's carrier bags, not making a purchase, but they had a bloody Waitrose card. Right? So again, human nature, you have to think about the fact that humans behave in their own particular way. We have a problem at Avon where we've got a huge tranche of our reps. So a majority of our business comes through reps still, where we've got these reps who don't behave like reps. They don't engage with our rep campaigns. They don't buy in bulk. They kind of just buy products once a month. A shower gel a month or a lipstick every 3 months. Does the lipstick last about 3 months? I don't know. Mine do. Well, why is that? Well, and we looked back at what was happening. And of course, when you become a rep, you buy a £30 starter kit. Do you get £100 worth of product? I'll become a rep, right? So again, it's understanding that customers will try and exploit those loopholes in your programs. And then now we're using data to try and work out, well, actually, how can we understand and identify those people as quickly as possible so that we can give them, not stop them being customers because we want them to be customers, but give them the most appropriate communications, not rep communications, but customer communications. And then I'll happily share this piece of work, but there's a piece of work that was done in the States about customers who become VIP customers. The level of expectation in terms of customer service goes through the roof, right? So if you haven't strung together all of your customer experience, all of your customer service propositions, your channels together, actually that falls flat because now the VIP is going, but I'm a VIP. I don't want to wait 30 seconds. I don't want to wait a minute. I don't want to wait 5 minutes on a call center. What do you mean I have to pay for returns? I'm a VIP customer. So you need to make sure that the whole ecosystem is right for those VIP customers when you're doing that recognition piece. And I talked about that constant evolution in basketball, and I think that's something that worth bearing in mind. That and I use ChatGPT. I actually went on to ChatGPT yesterday and just go, just give me the top 10 rule changes that have influenced basketball over the last 100 years. And of course, he didn't mention the 3-point rule. I thought, what's the point? So then I rephrased it to make sure you include the 3-point rule, and it did. But as you can see, right, this thing has evolved over time. And I guess one thing to bear in mind in terms of this evolution thing is that plans change. And in the words of Mike Tyson, right, everyone has a plan until they get punched in the mouth, right? So just bear that in mind. And hopefully that wasn't too poor next presentation for you guys, right? So thank you very much. I'd be really happy if you kind of linked in with me. That's the front copy of my book that it will be published in October. Put your name down for one.